I'm just going to mention the mission of a Toastmasters club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop oral communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. Finley's all excited about that mission, so Finley, hey, you're gonna have to go somewhere else. Shh. All right, okay. And let's go ahead and see, Bob, I know you've been busy and traveling on different jobs and things. Do you happen to have some quotes for us tonight?
I do. Thank you, Madam President. We will start off with this. We have no understanding of the energy that God planted within our souls. Therefore, God has to test us to bring forth these treasures that are buried deep within ourselves and make us unique. And that is by Esther Jurpros. He's an American author. Next one is: a good name is more desirable than great riches, a good reputation than silver and gold. And that was King Solomon. And the last is: every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. And that was by Harriet Tubman, an American pageant, I don't know how to pronounce it, AOB abolitionist. Is that the word, I believe? Abolitionist.
Abolitionist, right.
Yes.
There's a very fine movie out about Harriet Tubman.
Abolitionist, is that what we decided that was?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wanting to get rid of slavery.
Yes, that's what it was about.
Okay.
Back to you, Madam President.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bob. And thank you in general for just consistently giving us these quotes. I know it takes a little bit of time to find the ones that you want, and I look forward to it. So good. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Toastmaster of the evening, which is Sean. And we do have a speech tonight. Dan Craig, yay. So take it away, Sean.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, fellow Toastmasters. I'm looking forward to this meeting on our first daylight savings time meeting. And tonight I'm going to introduce our role players. Getting us started off tonight is going to be Mr. Vogel, and Bob is our timer. Bob, if you would explain your role, please.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This evening, as your timer, I will be holding the green card up at 1 minute. This course is during our table topics, and at which time at 1:30, you will receive a yellow card, and at 2 minutes, the red card. Keep in mind that you have 30 seconds to kick off your speech and 30 seconds to end your speech. In addition, we are going to have a prepared speech this evening that Mr. Dan Craig. And Dan, at 5 minutes, I will show the green card. At 6 minutes, I will show the yellow. And at 7 minutes, I will show the red. And then you will also have 30 seconds to wrap up your speech for this evening. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Yes, Dan.
One quick thing, Bob. I asked for 6 to 8 instead of 5 to 7.
Oh, okay. I'm glad.
So agreeing on 6, if you would.
Sure. Green on 6.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. And now I would like to introduce Jean Symington Craig as our grammarian, and I believe Jean will be presenting us with the word of the day this evening. Take it away, Jean.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. My role as grammarian, as Sean has pointed out, is first to introduce the word of the day. Our theme is talk is cheap. So I thought a little bit about cheap, and the word of the day, and I just put it in the chat, is paltry. Not poultry like chickens, but paltry. It's an adjective, and it's generally referring to an amount and meaning it's small or meager, not very much. So an example would be she would earn a paltry $33 more each month. A second definition would be petty or trivial. An example there, naval glory struck him as paltry. Not really that much. But the paltry in the first definition, I think, fits in well with cheap. So I will be looking for usages of paltry that fit in with our meeting and everything we're doing tonight. I'll keep track of that. My second job is to note creative, colorful usages of language, grammar, phrasing, and making note of that. And also noting if I see anything or hear anything that I think might benefit from a suggestion for a different direction. And I will also be giving that report at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jean. And tonight I'd like to introduce Art Atkinson as our awe counter. Art, will you please explain your role?
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster. As our counter, I will be listening for and recording instances where a speaker uses what we call a filler word or sound. Being the classic examples, but also so, but, and, used to string sentences together. Any place where a word is used or a sound is used in place of silence. I will keep note of who uses what, hopefully none, and report at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Art. And tonight, Bob Vogel is going to be our general evaluator. Bob, would you please like to explain your role as general evaluator this evening?
Thank you, Sean. At a certain point during the meeting, I will take over and give the evaluation of our evaluators. In addition to that, I will take over and I will call upon the reports to be called upon at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Bob. And tonight, I am going to be our joke master, and I'll try not to provide any paltry jokes, but I can't really guarantee that this evening. And with that said, I would like to welcome back Jean Symington Craig as she reads the objectives for Dan's speech.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Dan is doing the first speech project in level 2 of presentation mastery. It's called Understanding Your Communication Style. The purpose of this project is for Dan to learn about different communication styles and identify his or her primary style. And the purpose of the speech is for the member to share the impact of his or her style on others. Now, in the notes to the evaluator, it also says the member may choose to speak about his or her own communication style or the impact of communication styles on him or her. So it can go either way, and Dan can pick whatever information he wants to give. And I'm looking forward to hearing how he does. back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jean.
Mhm.
At this time, it is my pleasure to welcome Dan to the virtual podium, where Dan has been a member of Golden Speakers Toastmasters since 2011. He has held several officer positions for the club, including president, VP of Education, VP of Membership, and treasurer. He's been retired since 2021 and lives with his wife, Jean, and 2 dogs, Finley and Porter. Welcome up, Dan.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, in my speech tonight, I'm going to explore different communication styles that I've used during my working life. We'll see that at some points, my communications were not always so successful. How do I communicate? I took the questionnaire from this project, and it scored me about equally as analytical and supportive. I'm going to share a screen and show you some information about styles. The Pathways Project identifies 4 communication styles. There's direct communicators, which are results-oriented and focused, initiating, sociable and persuasive, supportive, patient and cooperative. Analytical communicators tend to be precise and disciplined. To drill down just a little on the 2 that I scored on, the supportive styles characterized by a calm and steady approach. Tend to be a good listener. People see them as dependable and loyal. Analytical tends to be logical, task-oriented, and self-reliant. No one style is superior to another, but it's valuable to know that these different styles exist so that we can understand how it is that we communicate, how other people communicate, so we can have those interactions more effectively and smoothly. I have ended my working life in 2021, as Sean said in the introduction. It was about 53 years. During that time, I worked in every type of organization: local, state, federal government, small and large nonprofits, large corporations, small corporations. I had jobs in Texas, New Mexico, New York, Washington, D.C., and Iowa. I have been retired. My last job was as controller of a real estate investment firm. I say I'm retired, but Jean still seems to come up with a steady stream of honeydews, so I guess that is my current profession. My working life began with a summer job at age 17, working in the wheat harvest at a grain elevator in Hoover, Texas, in the Texas Panhandle. My pay was $1.25 an hour. If that doesn't qualify as paltry, I don't know what does. My first day I showed up, they gave me a big aluminum scoop shovel, a wheelbarrow, and they took me to a grain storage bin that had grain sorghum on the floor, which had gotten wet and was sour. I was supposed to clean it up. I can think back, and the stench of that sour grain was just unbelievable. I came back the next day, and the first thing the elevator manager said was, "You came back." I think what he may have really been thinking was, hey, I've got myself a supportive, analytical personality type here. He's dependable and he's task-oriented. For my part, I developed the first principle of negative principle of working life, which was the lower the pay, the worse the job. My first professional experience was as a staff auditor, a civilian employee for the U.S. Army Audit Agency of the Pentagon in 1974. I was very much analytical, detail-oriented. At this time, I came up with my second negative principle of working life, which was the devil is in the details and the managers don't want to go there. I came up with that because the supervisors, as far as I could see, didn't really understand the jobs that they were supervising because they hadn't worked through all the detailed bits that were required. It never occurred to me that I should try to bridge that gap by understanding their different style of communication from mine. My first management job was around 1980 with the University of Texas Lands Accounting Office. We were auditing oil and gas royalties from production on university land. I was a staff auditor. Something interesting I did was kind of out of character. I started to toot my own horn by sharing my collection statistics with my supervisor. This was not the supportive analytical style. It was more of an initiating style. But it paid off. When he was promoted to be the director of the office, I was promoted into his job as supervisor. In this first management job, I think I did pretty well. I had a staff of 6 people. They were all kind of the same type of communicator as me. I had a boss who was experienced and supportive. It all worked out fairly well. But my next experience of managing did not work out so well. I took a job with a retail-oriented, family-owned business here in Fairfield. I had a larger staff, very diverse personalities, the entire gamut of different communication styles. And since it was a family business, I had a lot of bosses. These upper managers tended to be direct communicators, and they made me, the analytical, supportive communicator, feel confused and pressured. I remember once being in a meeting about staffing, just throwing up my hands and saying, but people are not pieces of furniture. There was just such a difference in my way of wanting to deal with people to the way that they tended to kind of move people on and off the chessboard, I guess you could say. I just didn't have the tools to properly deal with that situation. My third negative principle of working life was that the life of a middle manager can really be hell. It was a hell of my own creating because I didn't have any systematic knowledge of communication styles. I didn't have the tools to communicate, to listen or to speak to these other managers that had different styles. I'm going to blithely skip over the next 30 years of my career. A, because I don't want the speech to go till midnight, and B, there's a lot of repetition there. If I was working on my own or had a small staff of like-minded people, I tended to do well. If I was in a higher pressure situation with different communicator styles, I struggled. In conclusion, I want to say that I think that I had a harder time, a more difficult time in my working life than I should have. But I just didn't get the education, the important education about different communication styles. So I was working with a handicap. I would urge everyone listening to this to get some training, some familiarity with different styles of communication. And this will serve you well over the years as you deal with different types of communicators.
Thank you, Dan. Nice job.
Thanks.
Why don't we take a couple of minutes and send Dan our comments. We'll take 2 minutes and we'll do that now.
Just a paltry 2 minutes?
That's the agenda, Madam President.
That's 2 minutes.
Thank you, Bob. Did Dan's speech qualify?
Yes, this is qualified.
Excellent. Very good. At this time, Bob, do I turn the meeting over to you for the evaluation section?
Actually, I am the evaluator of the evaluators. I didn't realize I was evaluating Dan personally, other
No.
than the two.
Bob, you're as general evaluator, because next up I could be evaluating Dan's speech. You would
Okay.
be, it's a little mini, it's a paltry
Segue.
session right there. So you would introduce me. That's what
Just
Sean,
right now as the evaluator. Okay.
yeah. And then, yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
When we used to have more speeches in a meeting, we would maybe have three speeches in a meeting, and then there'd be a whole little section of 3 evaluators, and the general evaluator would be rocking and rolling right there. So,
Sure.
okay.
So I will hand the meeting off to Jean for the evaluation. Take it away, Jean.
All right. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator and fellow Toastmasters, and especially Dan. I always love learning more about Dan when he does talks, because even though we've been married for a while, there are these things that I don't know, and then I learn about him. So that's very fun. Things that I thought he excelled at. I thought it was a good overview, the way he handled drilling. First, he gave us the overview of the types of communication styles, just so we were oriented, and then he drilled into his particular communication style that the project uncovered for him. I like the way he did that. It's very clear. I thought his organization was well done. It was a chronological job history. Of course, he had a lot of jobs, and he said he wasn't going to bore us with them all, but the first ones, and he picked, were good, and he picked several types. You know, first job, worst work, lowest pay, going into the land, you know, the land management, whatever that one was, and talking about that, and going into the military, some of that. And so he gave us some nice types. I liked how he set that up. And he generally had a little story for each one, which helped anchor it in my mind. Lots of humor. The negative principles. I loved the negative principles. You know, the worse the job, the lower the pay, the worse the job, which is counterintuitive. It shouldn't be like that. You should get more money for the worst jobs. Anyway, those were nice little hooks, I think. Gestures, I liked his gestures. He talked about tooting my horn. Let's see, where are my hands here? Tooting my own horn. He had promoted. He was using his hands. He had some good gestures going there that I was a little surprised at how much they were. The stench from that, whatever, that sorghum situation. And I liked that he had at the closing at the end, they had a call to action to everyone. That it's important, and he had found it valuable, and he encouraged people to get training on communication styles to help with their own work lives, in work or even other venues, home life, any kind of group that you're involved with. So I really like that. Some things he could work on. I thought Dan had a little bit of he could improve a little bit on. He was looking up, kind of looking away, and it looked like he was trying to remember what he was saying. And we sort of do that sometimes in casual conversation, but I would recommend trying to keep more consistent eye contact, even which of course would reflect just maybe a little bit more of a handle on the content. Of course, it doesn't help that we're in the nighttime and brains are tired. So something like that, though, a little bit more eye contact, and then also some additional vocal variety in each story. This could almost be a challenge, you know, to challenge challenge Dan. He could, in each one of his stories, add a little more texture. Well, the first one, the one about the sorghum, the guy, and he did it. He went, the manager the next day said, "You came back." Like, oh my God. They never come back after the first day. They never do. And Dan did. That was funny. But in each additional story, I think because we're talking about communication, he could use it to, have his boss say something to him, or he says something to his boss or a co-worker like that just to kind of liven up the talk a little bit. The family business, it's like he had a good one there. He said, and I thought he could do a little more outrage. People are not furniture. Hello, you can't just do that to people. It's something a little bit more energetic like that. I would just add. But that's about my only comment for Dan, a suggestion or something to challenge himself with. I thought it was a very well done speech. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dan. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jean.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, I'd like to welcome Art up to the virtual podium.
I just have one thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't time your speech because I was trying to take notes of you giving something to Dan. So I wasn't able to do two at the same time.
So I got a blank check. Timing situation. I kept thinking, did I not? I just,
Well,
I was close enough though. I think I was close.
I will just focus on the other part, and
I know.
Otherwise,
well, my feeling was that I was close. I mean, I usually have a feel like an internal ticker that's going.
Okay.
I think I was close.
Okay, we'll go with close.
John's looking kind of aghast, like, "Are you kidding me? You were way over."
I'm just saying that's rare that you get a blank check. You better take advantage of it.
I know. Well, I wish I had taken more advantage of it, actually. Okay, good. Sounds like this evaluator qualified at least.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Art, we're ready to have some fun with your table topics questions.
Mhm.
Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I have 6 questions around the talk is cheap theme.
Mhm.
I'm eager to hear from somebody or see a hand wave.
Mhm. Sean.
Let's
I have
go
to
with
rearrange
question.
the windows
let's-
on my screen so I can see everybody's picture.
Sean is raising his hand, Art. Well, he was.
Okay, John,
Yeah,
1 through 6, which would you like?
let's go for number 1.
Tell us about the most expensive phone call that you ever made.
Mm. Do it.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master and my fellow Toastmasters. $978.
Oh my God.
$978 was the most expensive phone calls in a 30-day window on AT&T calling cards that I made in 1992 when Susan was stationed in Turkey.
Mm.
And we didn't know at the time how these calling cards worked,
Mhm.
because when we would make phone calls and talk to each other on what was called DSN, so I could go to her office on the base we were stationed in England, and I could call her in Turkey at a predetermined time, and we could talk for free for 20 minutes, which was great.
Mm.
But I'm missing my wife at night. So I just walked from our little apartment, our little 2-bedroom flat down High Street over to the payphone to British Telecom. That's right,
Telecom,
BT,
yeah.
British Telecom, and just used that number that they gave me on base, that calling card, which you didn't pay for in advance, but boom, we got that bill. I had no idea. It was crazy. So Susan was actually getting an extra $1,000 a month to be in Turkey. And that first month we spent it all on that calling card. And we're like, okay, we can't be doing this again. So that is the most expensive telephone calls that I've ever made.
Mhm.
Mr. Table Topics Master.
Mm. Money well spent. Mm.
Okay. Who's next? Has a great story, Sean.
Thank you.
Hi, Art.
Hello, Bob. 2 through 6.
Go number 3.
Gossip around the office water cooler. Is it costly to the person gossiped about? Is it costly to the gossiper?
Mhm.
Sweet, tender morsels is gossip on the tongue. Mm-mm-mm. Everybody gathers around the water thing to hear the sweet, tasty morsels of gossip. Laughter. Everyone loves laughter, unless you're the one being laughed at by the gossipers. Fellow Toastmasters, I would say it is very costly to be the brunt of gossip or to be the gossiper. It's not just a paltry thing which just rests underneath the skin. It can go down deep in your heart
Mhm.
and resonate there for your entire life sometimes. How does one get rid of it? I think only by thought, by reading, by self-assurance, and by courage and by strength that you are able to overcome the paltry gossiping at the water fountain. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hope someone was timing me. I got a free check.
You might have got a blank check too, Bob.
Hmm.
Okay, we have number 2, 4, 5, 6. Jean, make a choice.
Okay, how about 2?
Have you ever made a payphone call that cost more than the coins that you had on you?
Hmm. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters. I was running out of money and I was running out of time. I was trying to get up to Pennsylvania on the bus system from Durham, North Carolina, to meet this boyfriend for what was it, Loving Spoonful? John Sebastian and the Loving Spoonful was playing at his college, and I was down at Duke, and I naively thought that I could get a bus ticket and get where I needed to go with writing a check, because that's how I always bought things, was with a check. So my girlfriend got me to the bus early in the morning, and I go to write it, and I have to get on this bus because the concert is happening that night. I mean, it's all planned. I have to, and they won't take the check. And I didn't have a lot of money. I was just a college student. I did not have a lot of money. So my girlfriend gave me some little bit of money, and we just figured, and then we were going to try to send money by, what was it, Western Union, to one of the stops that the bus was going to get to before I ran out of money for the tickets that I needed to keep going. It was horrifying. And that included phone calls, because I only had a little bit of money to feed into the payphone to communicate with the world. And my bus kept moving, and I kept going, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be stranded. I'm not going to have any money. I don't know what I'm doing. And my weekend is going to be shot, and my friend is, and I won't be able to call him because I don't have any money. I had bigger problems then than just running out of money for the payphone meter. But the overall theme, I was running out of money. I was not going to make my goals. I didn't have change. Every penny counted. The good news is I did make it, and I had a great weekend.
Okay, Dan. 4, 5, and 6.
Could somebody evaluate me? Any volunteer?
I'll do it.
Okay. I'll take number 4, Art.
What is the $64,000 question?
Thank you, Mr. Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters. I'm going to answer your question literally to begin with. The $64,000 question was a quiz show. I think it was, could it have been in the late 50s? Was that far back? And it was an early television phenomenon. People got really interested in this quiz show. It was a forerunner in some ways of quiz shows that would become popular over time. If I'm recalling right, there ended up being a scandal. One of the major champions who had continued to win week after week after week was found to have cheated in some way. And I believe it was a big scandal because so many people were invested in this show, and then they find out he cheated. He just thought he was the hero, you know? I think there were even congressional investigations and that sort of thing. I think it's a good example or a good illustration of reality TV, how that started way back then with those quiz shows and has branched off in so many different directions now, you know, being lost on an island or shopping with the Kardashians or all of this crazy stuff. People just get invested in the person that they see week after week, and they root for them, and they feel good. with their hero continues to win, and then to find out it was a fraud. It was tough on innocent America back in the 50s.
Mhm.
Thanks for the question.
Mr. Toastmaster, how are we doing for time?
We are right at time, Art, right at 8:29.
Okay.
Mr. Vogel, would you like to tell us if everyone qualified?
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster, everyone qualified. I think. Depends. Yeah.
You qualified
Okay. Then I qualified.
based on my internal ticker.
Okay, great. Does everybody want to take a second and send me their vote for the best table topic speaker?
Did everybody speak?
I didn't speak.
Art didn't speak?
Jean spoke, Bob spoke, Sean
Oh,
spoke,
that's right. Well, Art,
Dan spoke.
you were the only table topics master. I got it. Did you want to talk, Art?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I'm fun inventing these questions.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So Bob, I think Sean will hand off to, let's see, who's handing off to whom? Art, are you want to hand off to Bob as, to Dan as the table topics evaluator or?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, it's a little confusing.
I will ask for 2 to 3 minutes, Mr. Timer. I've got 3 people.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, the first table topic speaker tonight was Sean. He was asked about the most expensive phone call he ever made, and he had a great story right in line with that. What a sick feeling that must have been when Sue and Sean found out that this nifty little number that they had, which let them talk for free, wasn't free. And the size of the bill. Wow. So a great story. I noticed some really good gestures as Sean talked. I think there was one point where he said, he pointed a finger at us. I can't remember what he was saying exactly. And a good wrap up. The only suggestion I can think of was maybe it would have been fun when you open that bill, or you probably got it in the mail, when you open that bill to give us a little shock, horror, outrage, something magnified. Bob was the next speaker. He was asked, does gossip around the water cooler cost the gossiper or the gossipee? I think's what it amounted to. Bob did a couple of interesting things. He started out saying, sweet, tasty morsels. It sounded like Gollum in The Lord of the Rings. My precious. I also thought he had a very interesting turn of phrase. I'm not the grammarian, but he said at some point that gossip doesn't just rest on the skin, it goes deep in the heart. Boy, what a word picture that was. So really excellent. I think the only suggestion I've got for Bob was he had an interesting conclusion, which was how do you get rid of it? Educate, read, develop your character, basically. I would just suggest an alternative to remember to wrap your conclusion back. So you're saying, yes, it does cost everyone involved. Give us some of that flavor. And finally, Jean was asked if there was a time before she was using a payphone and running out of money. And once again, the person answering the question had something they could trot out, which was really quite on point. A great story. It's so silly the way college-age kids do this wild stuff. They just sort of think, well, it'll work out somehow. Let's just get on the bus. And off they go. 25 cents less. Well, if I can make that one phone call and connect with Western Union and get the money there. But amazingly, she made it. So I think the most amazing thing about this was that it was such a great true story, and about them not taking a check and the whole thing. And she had a great pause in there too. My only suggestion really is perhaps a little dialogue. The ticket agent at the bus. Kid, you can't buy a ticket with a check. Something like that, with added humor.
Hmm. Okay. I'll give a quick little synopsis of Dan. So Art often has challenging questions. What is a $64,000 question? And Dan didn't miss a beat and went right into the history of the quiz show, which was clever, and the cheating scandal. Dan has gotten some gestures going here. Second time in the night, he said, he cheated, and he's got some space in there, and he had like his hands are sort of in amazement. I don't know, my hands aren't really centered here, but his talks, both talks tonight were enlivened with his smile, his expression, his vocal variety in terms of, whatever, extra energy, quieter. Really, I'm liking what Dan's doing tonight. The quick thing is that my suggestion would be to not to land the ending, and don't thank the Toastmaster or the table topics master for the question. It's just unnecessary. We should be thanking you for the talk. So that's it. Mm-hmm.
Am I up, Jean, or does Bob have the floor?
No,
still?
I think Bob should go ahead and take it from here. Bring us on in, because it's all reports.
All right. So the question would be, which table topic speakers qualified? And then all the speakers qualified. Then it goes down to the evaluator, which evaluator qualified. And our evaluator did not qualify this evening. And then we sent the table topics. So I'm going to go for the reports right now. First of all, we're going to go for a timer.
One thing, Bob. So Dan did not qualify his table topics evaluation.
That's correct.
Okay.
But Jean had a blank check, so she qualified.
Okay.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. So we know who's in the running and not in the running. Okay. All right, Bob. We're sorted out now.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to our timers report.
Okay. Yay. Bob is such a multitasker here.
Trying. For our table topics, Sean was 1:59. Jean was 2:17. Dan was 2:08. I had the blank check. And moving on to our speech this evening, Dan was 8 minutes and 17 seconds. Well done. Now we're going to move on to our grammar report. Jean, can you take over?
Yes, I just did one. What were the evaluator times?
The evaluator time was I thought it was.
Oh, I got a blank check.
Yes.
And then what was Dan?
Dan was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So what did he qualify?
No.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
3 minutes. And you just made it, Dan, and then you paused and you stopped, and it was at 3:29, and then you went on for about another 10 seconds. I think
Thanks for the question. You did. Thanks for the question.
Now,
That's what'll kill you. Thanks for the question, or back to you. You know, you just
yeah,
okay.
that's what took you over, Dan.
Yep. You never know how close you might be. Okay. Okay. So now we're on to the grammarian. Is that where we are, Bob? Okay.
On to the grammarian.
All right. Very good. So we had a nice use. We had good use of the word tonight. It was not paltry usage. I wasn't sure if you guys would step up and use the word, but Sean had used it once. Dan used it once. I put a star next to that one, which I will do if I think it's a really good spot on usage. I had one and Bob had two. So that was good usage. So grammarian was a little tricky because I was trying to do too many things at once. But with Sean, what I really liked was, and it's not really the usage, it was just the delivery, $978. And it just, boom, it just went into a hole all on its own. It had such gravitas. So I just liked the way that was. It almost could have been a word usage, but I liked it. Bob had that sweet, tender morsels of gossip. It almost sounds like chicken nuggets or something, you know, sweet little with dipping sauce or something. Resonate, and he had resonate, which I like. Dan had used the word invested, and that it was a fraud. It just was a fraud. So those are the ones I got. That's my report. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Jean.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we're going to move on to our awe counter, Mr. Art Atkinson. Art?
Tonight things were relatively clean. Dan used once, and he used the word and to string together sentences once. Nobody used or so. Jean used and to string together sentences twice. Sean did that once. And nobody used but. That's my report.
All right.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to Mr. Sean Frey for a joke for this evening. Sean?
Thank you, Bob. Talk is cheap, but the cost of laughter is no joke. Talk is cheap because supply exceeds demand.
Okay.
So, people always say talk is cheap, but then they go on and on about it. And I'm like, is that cheap talk or expensive talk? And finally, talk is cheap until you talk to a lawyer.
Got that right.
Yeah. Or an
And
account.
those are my paltry jokes for this evening.
Oh.
Homebrew humor. Very good.
I like it. Good job, John.
Thank you, Bob.
Now we're going to move on to the evaluation of the evaluators, which falls into my department. First of all, we are going to start by Jean. Now, when Jean spoke out about Dan, point out, I like my Gene always has a positive. He excelled. I like that word. I mean, that's always when you start off. I just something about that like that. She also pointed out he had great organizational skills, and that says here, he said paid a lot, but picked. Oh, that she also in her evaluation, Jean. I like what she does it because she puts in suggestions and then rants about how good Dan is, and then puts another suggestion, then rants on Dan how good Dan. And so it's not just flow, Dan, you're all this, and then punchline. And so Gene's good at that. So you just kind of intermix it. It's kind of like a piano, just a little bit of thing. And I like that. And then pointed out some of the good things about Dan, about his gestures, his laughter, and how it made her laugh. It made all of us laugh. She did a couple of suggestions about his facial features and give more some animations. And I thought that was kind of funny. And I agreed with her this way. The only suggestion I have for Jean, maybe on that one, was at the beginning of Dan's thing. I think when you point out, when you knew what his style was, I think you should have capped yours with the suggestion, bring it back to what you've got, what you thought his style was, and then just point out how it impacted you and how he drove it home.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one was Dan. He repeated the question for Sean, what the most expensive story. And I like the way Dan said, that's a sick feeling. And I just thought it was kind of funny how he said that. And it wasn't free. He gave good gestures and a good wrap up. And his suggestion was like, I like Dan's suggestion. He's like, he was in shock. I'm like, giving that to Sean. And I resonate with that. Then he came back to me. He also pointed out, like, talked about sweet, tasty morsels and how it gave him a good picture in his mind what it was like and how it got deep in his heart. And then I liked the suggestion too, because he says I should bring back my speech at the beginning, so it kind of made it all pull together.
Yeah.
I really don't have suggestions because he did a good job doing it. And then finally was Art. And then pointed out that all the Stan has suggestions. Pointed out Dan's energy. That's what it was. Point out the energy. And suggestion, plan the ending. Don't just say thanks. That was the only suggestion. Yeah, stop it at the 3:29 and yeah, go from there. And that's my report.
Bob, you don't get a free pass if the Hawk Hunter has already given his report. You were full of ums and ahs and ers.
Okay.
I've noticed a pattern.
I use that.
When we're a designated speaker, we're careful and minimize the filler words. And when we're just talking, like you were just talking, or we're just talking in the meeting after the meeting, we get lazy and the ums and the ers crowd in there.
Yep.
Dan's speech was, to my hearing, absolutely clean. And if you listen carefully, Dan has internalized the prohibition against filler words, and he doesn't use them.
Okay. Thank you, Art. Need to step up my game.
Yeah.
I wonder why I'm an when I take notes like that. Not sure.
I've found that people are much more likely to use filler words when they're an evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
Something about being an evaluator is the hardest task for filler words. It is for me.
I think it's the hardest task for any role that I take on in Toastmasters, being the evaluator for whatever reason. Personally, I'm more comfortable with other roles than that.
But you're good at it, Bob. You're good at it. So even though
Yeah.
you have grown in your capabilities, even if it's not your favorite job, because you want to get better. You can see that you listen and you apply. That's always been something I really enjoy watching in you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now we're going to be moving on to Mr. Toastmaster this evening, who's going to be handing out the awards. Mr. Sean Frey, take it over.
Thank you, Bob. And let's have a drum roll for the table topics
I'm
winner.
sorry, I sent my vote in late and to everybody. So there you go. They were all good, but there you go.
And tonight, I can't believe it, but I actually am the table topics guy.
Yay!
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Get it out. There it is. Yay, Sean. Right. Good.
And by unanimous decision, I believe, and the blank check, Mrs. Jean Symington Craig
Yay!
for the best evaluator.
Yay!
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Jean.
Thank you. Thank you. Mhm.
And with that said, I would like to turn the meeting back over to our president.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Let's see.
Art has a question.
Art, you have a question?
Yeah, could I read you guys the question number 6? I really want to share it with everybody.
Okay.
Sure.
Golden Speakers meets for approximately 8 hours each month. Toastmaster International dues are $10 a month. Is that 8 hours of talking cheap?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
$10 a month is
an
a
hour.
$10 a month is a paltry sum for the benefits that we're gaining.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. That's a
Nice.
good sales technique, isn't it? Break it down to the dollar cost, and then you just go, it's negligible.
Yep.
Yeah. That was really going to be a question, though. Oh, Art,
yeah.
that was,
That would have been tough.
yeah,
It would be an opportunity to say it's inexpensive, but it's valuable.
exactly, exactly. And it really does require. Dan, yes, Dan.
I'm sorry to, if there's more to say on this subject, I'm sorry to interrupt. But I just wanted to point out that maybe there was a best speaker.
Oh,
Oh,
yes. I'm using my dog voice, and he's looking up at me like, okay. So, Mr. Toastmaster, we
Drum
hand it
roll.
back to you.
drum roll for the best speaker tonight.
This evening.
And it's none other than Mr. Dan Craig.
Woo!
Oh,
Woohoo!
what a surprise.
Good job.
I didn't see that coming.
Oh,
Okay, very good. Thank you. Always, we never want to overlook an opportunity to give recognition. All right. Just want to mention a quick thing in passing for officers here on this call. December 5th which is a Tuesday, the district-wide officer training is happening from 6:30 to 7:45. I think we can do it. You know, we're normally starting to gather here at 7:40, but I think it would be really convenient to just go from the officer training, lickety split out of there. It'll be on Zoom, and then come right over to our meeting. But we get here probably 7:44, something like that. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Any
Make sure you pass that by Alex and Karthik.
Yeah, I mean, they can go other times, but I just think it would be really nice to get it done early, and you're already in the pipeline for going to Toastmasters anyway. So Okay, good. That little bit of business. Does anyone else have any particular business?
Well,
Yeah.
VP of Education, if I could ask, does anybody need to schedule a speech?
I got to start working on my next one.
Okay.
I can't, obviously not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, I can.
Okay, that would be the 21st.
28th. No, wait. Next Tuesday is the
14th.
14th. The 21st. Is that what you're saying, Bob?
Yeah, the 21st.
Okay.
You know, in 2 days it's Thanksgiving. You're not planning to be anywhere with Yoda, or
I am, but
not until the next day?
yeah, I mean, I'll be on Thursday. So, but it's the following week that I won't be at Toastmasters the following week, the
Okay.
20th.
So the 21st is good. So you
21st.
give your speech, and then 2 days later you get to give thanks for having gotten through and done your speech.
Right.
Yeah. Sean, are you speaking of, I think the last time we talked, you had said something about having a speech almost in your pocket. Now that you're back, are you able to, sort of point your neurons in that direction, or? Oh, why are we not hearing you?
How's that? Is that better?
Oh, yeah, but it didn't have the little mute deal going. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so that speech still is in my hip pocket. It's not quite done.
Mhm.
However, I will be at the meeting next Tuesday, I believe. But I'm not sure I could have it ready by then. Let me look at it and see. I could let Dan know by Sunday when he does the
Okay.
agenda.
It feels good to get it off of the landing pad. I just say, you get it launched
Mhm.
and it just feels good. And it's like, oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. I took a look at it tonight briefly before the meeting
Okay.
and
Good.
realized it still needs a bit of work, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's something I've done for years and it's pretty well committed to memory what I want to talk about anyway. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
yep. And
Yeah.
I'll also be out promoting Toastmasters. I'll be in Illinois and I'll be in Normal, Illinois, and then trekking to Milwaukee. So hopefully I'll have an opportunity to pass out a few of our Toastmasters brochures.
Good. Yeah, very good.
Mhm.
Very good. With that, we're going to go ahead and gavel it out. I've got my gavel here. Bang, 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 bang. You guys, it's wonderful to see you. Although talk is cheap in general, our talk is always valuable. It's never paltry. It's worth every penny. So with that, we'll let you guys go. You have a good rest of your week. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.